right, guys, our favorite time of the week when we get to answer a few of your questions just for our premium subscribers. Saagar, what do we got up first?
Number 1 from Michael Mancuso, I believe. Do you plan to do any original reporting? I'm not going to rule it out, right?
Yeah. I mean, look,
if you have info, bring it.
It's not totally our wheelhouse. To do original reporting takes a lot of time and attention, which usually we spend a lot of time prepping for the show and writing our monologues. That's kind of our focus, and what we'd like to bring you is the best journalists that we believe are out there breaking the most significant stories. That being said, I mean, Saagar and I have both broken different stories in our life. It's certainly something we know how to do. We don't rule out for the future also some kind of expansion that may include more of that. But so it's not the primary focus, but nor do we rule it out.
Right, exactly. So look, we're a brand new business. So right now we're focused on little things like how do we get a desk plaque for our lifetime members.
Well, and also just making sure we have the workflow locked in so the show is delivered on time and the edits are done correctly and all of those things on a daily basis.
You guys pay us to get a show at 11. You would not believe how difficult that actually is to do, to pull off in practice. And equipment that you have to buy. That is where our current focus is. But like you said, are we going to rule that out? Especially come election time or something, and we could send somebody, whatever. Absolutely. I would love to do that.
Yep. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, definitely let us know.
Yeah, please.
All right. Second question. This one is for Saagar. I was noticing with interest the books behind you. In fact, I went out and bought the Robert Kennedy bio by Schlesinger and the Freedom from Fear history book. I was wondering, even though you identify as a man of the right, if you felt any affinity for the older New Deal Great Society liberal tradition before the center became corrupted by neoliberalism.
Well,
Great question.
How did you guess there,
Great
Ronald?
Question.
Why do you think I have these books? Which is that Freedom of Fear in particular. I'm so glad that you bought that one. That's about freedom from the Great Depression, FDR. It's called The American People in Depression and War. That's from the Oxford History Series of the United States, which is incredible. Kennedy in his times, I love that book. I think Kennedy's a fascinating figure. And Lyndon Johnson, The Exercise of Power as well.
He is a fascinating figure, actually.
All of those, of course. I think you can tell. I believe in doing big things. And I look to the times when we did big things in American history. The New Deal was the very last time that happened. There's a lot actually to be said around rethinking of the conservatism and its relationship to the New Deal. Modern conservatism, as we know it, the Goldwater era forward, is a reaction to the New Deal. But that, in my opinion, basically died in 2016. Looking forward to whatever's next, that's the real question. And that's why I have these books behind me, because I like to look at people who did great things in American history, or in at least modern American history, with some of the current structures and the modern economy and all that, instead of thinking about Lincoln or whatever. I'm not saying that isn't important, but it's very important to look at the people who you want to emulate if you want to build something new.
Yeah, what are the examples from the past of when we truly shifted the course of the direction of the country, and what can we learn from the people and the movements that were involved to make those things happen? I think that's something that we're both very fascinated with.
Wasn't that long ago,
Not at all.
Remember.
Not at all. All right, what do we got next?
Alex Fish. I love the premise of your show about how we should hate each other less and the elites more. However, I'm sometimes a bit confused about what the term means. What defines an elite? Is it a person with a certain position of power? Is it anyone who has a certain amount of money and time and certain ideological viewpoints?
I would say power. And so in American society, oftentimes that correlates to money. Anyone who has a certain amount of money, you're going to have a position of power. I mean, we know whose phone calls get picked up by folks in Washington. We know who gets listened to, who gets brought into the White House, whose priorities get represented in terms of the actions of the legislators here. So money directly correlates to being an elite, but you also have, cultural figures who have disproportionate sort of cultural power, athletes, celebrities, etc. You also have political power that may or may not correlate directly to wealth, although many of these people somehow manage to get rich while they're serving in office. That's weird. They just must be geniuses who know how to play the stock market better than anyone else. But so I would say political power, cultural power, financial power, with if you had to pick one of those, above all else, this is financial power.
I would say financial. Yeah,
they run, as we've covered here. I mean, you have specific examples, and we're about to talk about Bill Gates, but of being overwhelmingly powerful within public health, overwhelmingly powerful within the labor market, having all of their priorities and desires and demands, met by the people in power. So, the people who have the most money, they are at the top of the pyramid in terms of elites, I would say.
Power is exactly the right question. It's not always money. It usually is. It also has political, cultural power. Cultural power has replaced some political power in terms of power. And so, look, it's complicated. I've said this before, but this is an example of how cultural power, I think, can trump money, which is that if you're a plumber, you're only making like 100 grand versus somebody who works in journalism who's making like 40. The journalist has more power than you do because they have more power in order to influence the zeitgeist at a broader political discussion. So that's why money is not the only barometer of whether you're powerful or not. And this is where I think things get tricky. But generally, when we're talking about elites, we're talking about people who run institutions, financial institutions, political institutions, cultural institutions, how the ideology that they have has a disproportionate impact on your life, on the U.S. economy, and more. So that's, I think, a pretty succinct explanation, right, of what an elite is.
That's how we think about it.
Okay, number 4.
Next up, Trenton Walkenhauer. Would you guys be willing to cover the right to repair movement? Luis Rossmann is starting to gain traction on the topic, and a shout out from you guys would go a long way for an important topic. You are in luck. We are planning.
We're literally going to talk to Luis.
Exactly that segment. Yeah. We're looking to get Luis on, whose work we've been looking at. We looked at with GameStop.
He was very helpful in GameStop.
Very helpful. We featured some of his commentary, just breaking down what was going on there. That was, I think, very useful for ourselves, but also for a lot of our viewers who aren't so steeped in, the world of finance. And so, yes, I think it's something I've actually focused on some from the farm and ag economy perspective. Obviously, he's focusing on it from like Tesla and iPhones and those sorts of things. So 100% excited to do that segment. It's
an important top-down issue, which has future implications and agricultural ones. So yeah, I'm really excited to hear what Luis has to say. We're going to have him on the show sometime next week. It will be a longer form discussion. So make sure that you guys check that out. Last question here, which is from Kostya Cedar. What is your take on Bill Gates being the largest owner of America's farmland? His plan to have his robotic farm workers, petroleum-based fertilizer, GMO seeds to produce GMO produce, and his privatization of seed banks and charging the genetic makeup of seeds so they are chemically dependent. Seems bad.
Yeah.
What do you think, Krystal?
I didn't know about all those things.
Yeah, no endorsement. I don't know if any of that's true.
So I'm gonna have to do a little bit more research. But in general, my take is that every billionaire is a policy failure, and this is why. Because they do have too much, going back to the question of elites, like, you end up with way too much power. You end up with way too much sway over segments of society that you should not have such sway over. And so, when I see Bill Gates buying up all this farmland, what is he the largest owner of?
Largest private landowner in the United States. I don't know if that's technically true. I know that that's a trope. We talked about it when we were on Rogan.
There's some like commodity that he owns the most of too. It's
there's I forget what it is.
Tomatoes or corn or it was something random.
Even if he owns a lot and not the most, it seems bad.
It's uncomfortable.
Right.
It's very uncomfortable. So that's in general my take. But I'll look into some of the. I'm gonna look into some of these specific things here. The changing the genetic makeup of seeds so they're chemically dependent. Ooh. I mean, that is some stuff that
didn't Monsanto?
Monsanto. That's the kind of shit that they do. Ties into like monopoly issues, and then they don't let you like propagate your own seeds. They'll literally like come to your house and have investigative teams to make sure that you don't do that. You have to keep buying their version of the seed year after year after year. Crazy that any one company should have that kind of power. Monsanto is kind of a particularly evil company. So I don't know if Bill Gates is doing that kind of stuff or not, but if he is, I'm going to look into it.
No clue. We'll take a look. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. In general, I'm skeptical.
Yes.
I'm deeply skeptical.
Yes, that is well said.
Okay,
all right,
guys.
Thanks so much for watching. We love you all so much. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you back here on Monday.